Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clint Rogers, and I'm the principal here at Anago High School, and we welcome you into our first public event in a long time. So welcome. Before we get rolling, I'd like to just remind you to silence your cell phone so that we're not disturbed by that. And then I want to do just a quick introduction of names for students who, part of our forensics team is here, and they have selected the questions. So just give a wave when I announce your name. So Peter Kredinsky and Juliana Boutnick, and join me in welcoming them. And then we also have our timekeeper, who is also a student representative to the board, Noelle Tischendorf. So let's welcome Noelle. And then from the Anago Daily Journal, who's going to be our moderator today, Kevin Passon. All right, thank you, and we'll get rolling. On to you, Kevin.
All right, thanks for being here tonight. We have 7 candidates for the Anago School Board coming up on the April 6th election. The top 3 vote getters will each serve a 3-year term. The candidate number 4 will serve a 1-year term, and hopefully the other 3 candidates will be back next year for another run on the ballot. For tonight's candidate forum, we don't want to call it a debate, but it's a candidate forum. Each candidate will begin with a 2-minute opening statement. We have a series of questions by our students. We'll alternate the order of who answers first. Each person will get 2 minutes to respond to a question. And then at the end of the evening, each will have another 2 minutes for concluding remarks. As you are talking, our timekeeper at the end, when your 2 minutes time, when you get to the 30-second mark, the yellow card will come out. And when you have 10 seconds left, the red card will come out. At 0 seconds, we probably are not going to silence your microphones, but you just never know. So, just be worried that we're going to try and get through as many questions as we can tonight. We are on a 2-hour time limit, so hopefully we can get through 6 or 7 questions here tonight. And with that, we can begin.
Statements? Isn't it the opening statements? Wasn't it the opening statements first?
Oh, yeah. Opening statements.
We're going to start with opening statements. All right, we'll start on the end with Wayne.
Good evening. I'm Wayne Gagnon. I'm currently serving on the school board. I got on last fall when another member resigned. I got on primarily because I feel the school board needs a teacher's perspective. We have a lot at stake. I am actively teaching. I'm an adjunct instructor for North Central Technical College, Nicolay College, and I'm the guidance counselor at All Saints Catholic School. I work there half a day a week. I deal with students from kindergarten through 50-year-old adults. I understand what it's like to be in a classroom. I feel that the perspective that I can give as a teacher is invaluable. So, thank you.
All right. Dave?
My name is David Bardo. I've been in education 37 years. Carol and I have 5 children, 3 who graduated from Anago High School. We have 8 grandchildren and 2 who will be attending this high school, and that was the primary reason that I decided to run for the school board. One thing I want to tell you up front is that in our school district this year, we had 175 students who have open enrolled to other districts. 32 came in. And so my question is, what does that say about our district that 143 children, those parents, would choose to send their children to another district? And we are required by the state to send $8,125 with each of those children to other districts, which means that this school year, based on the third Friday count, we sent over $1,161,000 to other school districts. we're taxed for $1,028,000, which means that we send out all of our taxes that are collected to other school districts. Many people take their children to other districts because that's where their job is, and it's convenient for them to take their children and have daycare near their job. But most people send their children to other schools because they're dissatisfied with our district, and that needs to change.
Thank you. Jill?
Good evening. Good evening.
No.
Testing.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Now? I'm Jill Maddock Nelson. I was born and raised here in Antigo. I graduated from Antigo High School. After graduating from college, I returned back home to where my husband and I raise our family. I am a mother of 3, with my youngest in daycare and my oldest in high school. Professionally, I've spent all of my career in the human services field, ranging from serving as an advocate for victims of abuse to transitioning to a Langley County child abuse and neglect social worker, and now in my current capacity as a service facilitator within Langley County for youth with mental health and behavioral health needs. I decided to run for the board because I'm a mom, and my children are going to be in our district for a number of years to come, so I'm very invested as a parent and as a taxpayer. I'm very involved in our community. And I think we have I know we have a very strong community. And I would like to restore the trust and transparency between our community and our district. Because we've got a lot of support, and I think that's one area of an improvement and a big motivator for me. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mike Boldig. I know it says Michael down there, but that's what my mother called me when she was upset, so hopefully nobody is with me that way. I have been a member of the Board of Education for approximately 12 years. I've enjoyed my time on the board. I think I have done my best to represent all of the residents of the Antigo School District. My daughters both graduated from here, and one of the proudest moments of my life was to hand them both their diplomas when they graduated. So there's a lot of work to be done. We've had a lot of turmoil the last couple of years. This is part of it with the masks and stuff. Understand it, but I think I still have a lot to offer the district as far as a level head, and I do believe that experience matters and that I have a lot to offer the district yet, and I would hope for your support. Thank you.
Hello, my name is James Schultz, and I was born and raised here, lived here all my life, and I attended Mattoon and Crestwood Elementary Schools. I think that was a great experience. Looking back as a kid, that was a good highlight of my education, I think. My dad had a cheese factory here, and we closed in 1985, and then when we went to HVAC and brothers branched out, I drove a truck for a little while. And in my HVAC business, I started my own in 2016. And I've been in 1,000 homes in this last year myself personally, on service calls and different things like that. And in the years before that too, I was getting into many homes every year, 600 homes a year. And so I hear a lot of what people got to say. I hear a lot of people, even outside the district, what they say about Antigo. 2013 to 2016, I was on the school board. I ran, and I'm running again, pretty much because I would like to see the school district represent the desires and the wants of the people. And what the term is, it's not I didn't make this term up, but I heard it. But this has been my goal in my heart. Somebody gave words to it. Make the Antigo School District a destination district. A district where people, whatever their skills, whatever their jobs, whatever kind of money they make, they want to come to this school district because of the type of schools we have. And I think that we had that years ago, and that was changed by consolidation and centralization. And so I'm running for the school board again to see what we can do to make this a destination district.
Thank you. Angel?
Hello. Thanks. I would like to start with, I am the current CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Northwoods, and there's a little confusion. I just want to thank my board of directors for letting me be here tonight. I was supposed to be at a strategic planning session, and I'm just thankful to have the support of them. But a little bit about me. I am invested in Langley County and the people who live here. My passion is to serve the community and make the lives of young people better. I'm running because our children deserve the best education possible and a bright future. I was born and raised here as well. I'm a graduate of the class of 2001. I have 2 children in the district. My son is at 4K at East Elementary. My daughter is in 1st grade at North. I have a human services degree, and I've been with the Boys and Girls Club for 16 years. During that time, I've been involved in many different community coalitions, committees, partnerships with the school district. I've served on different boards, the Antigo Optimist Club. Currently, I serve on Langley County Economic Development and the Spirus Langley Hospital. I feel like I have a great fit for our school district. I care passionately about helping the youth and doing whatever it takes to help them succeed in life and even break the cycles, that they're raised in. There's so many challenges these days, especially this year, just adding to the struggles that they go through each day. And I feel there's different ways our district can help them out and keep people here and bring our community together, and not just the school district, but everybody advocating for our school district and our school, and why Antigo and Langley County is a great place to live. Thank you.
Andy?
Okay. My name is Andy Mary, and along with my wife Elizabeth, we own and operate Mary's Berries. I'm a lifelong resident of Antigo. I graduated from the Antigo school system. I've served 2 years in the Army. I attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison and received a degree in mechanization and management. I've always had a strong commitment to our community. Our business is very community-based and wouldn't function without a good community. I've served on the Economic Development Committee for 6 years, 2 years as president. I've served on the CISA-9 Board of Control for 8 years and 5 years as president there. I've served 9 years on the Antigo School Board and the last 2 years as president. I think one of our most important areas for the school board to be working on is for continued improvement in student performance. We hired a new superintendent, it'll be 3 years now, and hopefully she'll be here for several years to come. Consistent leadership at the district level, but also at school levels, is very important to student performance. There's studies that have shown that if you change a school principal, it takes that school 3 to 5 years to get back on track. And so I think it's really important that we have consistent leadership. We've hired quality teachers and try to retain them. In the last 2 years, we've had much fewer teachers leaving our district. And in the last year, we've even had staff people, teachers, administrators call our district and ask, would you have an opening for me? So I think that's a great improvement over where we were. Okay.
Thank you. We'll begin with our first question, and we're going to for this question, we're going to start in the same order that we just did. So we'll begin with who's got our first question.
So,
Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, so I know that some of you have touched on this when you're opening statements, but we're going to be starting over by Mr. Gagnon. Why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will be your priorities?
As I stated in my opening comments, I think I can give a teacher's perspective. In the last year, teachers have been run through the ringer. A year ago now, I was in the same position many of our teachers are in. I was trying to transition, we were transitioning from in face-to-face in-class learning to virtual learning. I did it. It was tough for me, and I don't have near the workload that our teachers in our school district have. I can empathize with what they've gone through. I understand why they did, or how they did it. I know the challenge of having students in the classroom and what I call out in TV land. They're in a screen behind you or in front of you. It can be challenging. As a member of the board, I'd like to maintain and give that perspective to the board, because everybody that I've dealt with on the board, their hearts are in the right place. Everybody, they're very receptive to listening, and I think that if they have this voice with experience of almost 30 years in a classroom, I think that's valuable. And I think I can bring that perspective and empathy for our teachers to the board.
Alrighty, and then moving on to Mr. Bardo, the same question applies. Why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will be your priorities?
Thanks, Juliana. As I said earlier, I've been in education for 37 years. I'm a retired school district administrator. I was the superintendent at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood for 16 years, and after I retired, I was Leona's superintendent for 3 years. I've been a principal, a high school principal, a middle school principal, an assistant high school principal. I've been an athletic director. I've been a coach. I've been a teacher. I think I can be an asset to this school board. I told you that we had 5 children. We are a military family. My oldest son is a lieutenant colonel over in Poland working for NATO. My second son was a sergeant who got the Purple Heart fighting in Iraq. We also have 2 captains in the family. I've worked with school boards since 1977, first as a head negotiator for the teachers, then in my years in administration. I've worked on many boards. I've been elected to the WIAA Board of Control, the WIAA Advisory Council, chairman of the CISA 8 Professional Advisory Council, president of the Central Wisconsin Association for School Management. All those were by my peers, and I have a doctorate in educational leadership from Edgewood College.
Alrighty, and then Ms. Maddock Nelson, why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will be your priorities?
Don't worry, Julie, your time's not going.
Take two. Can you hear me? Awesome. All right. So the why. Sorry, it always throws me off. Why am I running for the board? I am running for the board because I feel I'm naturally driven to advocacy and listening to others' opinions, thoughts, and views, and seeking to better understand. So that's one of the reasons I'm running. I've been asked to run several times over the past several years. And I'm a mother to young children, so there's never the right time to run, right? It's a time commitment, and I just felt like now's the time to do it. Professionally, I'm blessed with the opportunity to work very closely with our district, staff, and administration. I've always valued teachers and educators. I mean, our children are with educators more hours per day than parents are, and I think they're invaluable. So for those reasons, I've always felt as though I could be a strong advocate for students and student achievement. And my background and my daily operations allow me to have some unique perspectives, and so those are kind of my why. Priorities would be, as I touched on earlier, transparency. I think we need to rebuild our communication and our trust within our community, specific to the board and the taxpayers. And refocus our, sorry, the warning sign just threw me off. Refocus our thoughts and framework on students and student achievement. And then become fiscally responsible would be my priorities if you elect me to the board.
Oh, not a problem, Juliana, thank you.
Alrighty, we're back. And for the same question applies like previously to Mr. Boldig. Why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will your priorities be?
I'm running because I love what I do on the board. It's rewarding work, but I also care deeply about education. I think that's the foundation of any community, is to provide a good educational experience for all young people, to get them so they're capable of thriving in a community and bringing a community back. A lot of our current staff now and faculty are former students, and that's wonderful that they're coming back to their hometown to teach. And I think that's a big thing to me, is that kids are coming back to the area and they want to see the community thrive and provide that. Now, as a priority, a couple of things. I believe that we can provide a quality education to the students, but we need to do it as economically as feasibly possible. And I think we've been on that track for quite some time. If you look at our district overall, 20 years ago, our tax rate was much, much higher than it is today. And I think we've accomplished that due to the hard work of the Board of Education, and I would like to help continue that work. The other priority I would have is something that one of the other forum candidates here touched on, is to retain good quality talent. We've got a good core staff of educators, teachers, staff, IAs all across the board. Our administration team is working hard each and every day to improve the district, and I'd like to see us do our best to retain that talent and keep moving forward. Thank you.
Alrighty, Mr. Schultz, once again, why are you running for the board? And if elected, what are your priorities going to be?
Well, the main reason I'm running for the board is because I believe I have the heartbeat of the community. Like I said, I've been in 1,000 homes this last year, and every year I've worked as an HVAC tech. I've been in 500 to 600 homes every single year. And I talk to people, and I've told, when I was on the board, I told them I was on the board, and I bring up a conversation in the House, and I tell you that the number one response I got every single time, almost 95% of the time, was, they told us that school wasn't fit to have a kid in, and we had to build a new high school, and then they turned around and made it into a middle school. They're mad. People are mad about what they are told, and then what the board turns around or the school district turns around and does after the fact. You have storylines that go out, like the elementary schools were too expensive to keep, they're too expensive to run. And when I got on the board, I found Mary Jo said that for every $10 we spend on an elementary school student, we spend 20 on a middle school student and 30 on a high school student. Well, anybody that does math says, hey, that's the lowest cost of operation, the elementary schools. And I asked Dr. Childs about that question, that same thing, and he said, yes, elementary schools are always the lowest cost of operation. So, why were we closing elementary schools? To save money. That didn't make sense. But that was the push. That was the whole consolidation, centralization. And the community is against that. So until you really, truly partner with the community, what they really desire, what they're really looking for, what they really want in a district, in their elementary schools and your schools, you will never move this district forward in any kind of really cohesive and long-range plan. And like Andy Mary said, if you change the principals, well, how much more if you change teachers, going from room to room to room, instead of having one teacher in one class for that class.
Alrighty. And Ms. Zimmerman, why are you running for the Board of Education, even though I know you touched on it? And if elected, what will your priorities be?
Thank you. Kind of similar to Jill, I've thought about running in the past and never, had some other things on my plate. And considering the year that we've had, I'm very passionate. Just decided the time is now. There's no time to wait. And I do think our school district is doing a lot of great work. And I would like to help restore some public trust as well and share the great things that we're doing. So many people want to point out what is wrong and this and that, but there are some really great things, and we have great students and we have great teachers. Another part is to recruit and retain good quality teachers and be consistent and help give them what they need, give them the support, whether it's figuring out professional development days, help create a culture where teachers feel valued and teachers are happy. I mean, I sent my son to 4K at East Elementary because of the teacher, because she's a great teacher. And, we have this here. And the times have changed. The old way of thinking of how school should be is not the same. The kids have so many challenges. And we need to look at all of that as a whole and figure out how we can work together and help students succeed. So those are my reasons.
Alrighty, thank you. And then Mr. Mary, finally, why are you running for the Board of Education? And if elected, what will your priorities be?
Okay, I'm running for the board because there's still work to do. Yeah, I enjoy serving our community. I appreciate all the other people who serve our community in so many ways, and this is my way of serving the community. As far as priorities, in the past 2 years as school board president, I've worked to implement an evaluation process for our superintendent. And I think this is very important. We went through a period where we had a superintendent a year, sort of, and we never had consistent evaluations. And so we've come up with an evaluation that covers policy administration, budget and finance, curriculum, staff development and supervision, and school and community relations. As part of the evaluation for superintendent, we have a list of goals that the superintendent gives us for the future year, but also we have developed a set of goals for the district. And during that evaluation, it's our chance to see how we are meeting those goals, what steps we have to take to do better. I think another important priority for me would be to do more lobbying with our state representatives. Anago is, there's a real inequity in school finance in the state, and Anago is at the bottom of that inequity. When I say inequity, some schools get more, some schools get less. Anago is at the bottom of the funding from the state, and our representatives need to know that and need to work for us. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm going to physically hand it off to Peter. There you go.
Thank you. So our next question will first be directed at Mr. Bardot. Mr. Bardot, how do you believe the board can be accessible to the community and by proxy specific community groups?
School boards should focus on 5 areas to improve student performance: vision, accountability, policy, community leadership, and board superintendent relationships. And your question, Phil, is about community leadership. What we need to do is not put out referendums that say, if you don't pass this, this is what will happen. The last time there was a referendum for building a new school at the elementary level, 60% of the people voted against it. They closed the rest of the outlying schools, and now we're in a situation where we have 3 elementaries in town. I have heard they are overcrowded. And if we think back to the time when we had the rural schools, they had their own local PTAs. They knew the teachers knew them. Each school had a sports team. Back when we were winning football championships, these little schools were sending in 9 quarterbacks for Gordy Schofield to pick from in 9th grade. We don't have that anymore. Our parents outside the city have been disenfranchised by decisions made by the board. Over the past couple months, I have gone to village board meetings. I have talked to people. I have given presentations of a PowerPoint on why our taxes went up. I've been going out to the people. And that is what school board members should do.
Thank you. And on to Ms. Maddock Nelson. How do you believe the board can be accessible to the community and by proxy specific community groups?
I think the board can make improvements with being more open and welcoming to the community. I say that in terms of public comment, truly engaging and seeking feedback from the community to share to utilize that opportunity to share public comment. It would be great, speaking from experience, when I've addressed our board as a community member, I didn't know what happens next. Like, you know, I didn't need an answer to what I was sharing, but it was just as though it almost felt falling on deaf ears. I think if we could increase the communication and follow-up, even to say thank you for taking the time to address us or bring that to us or share the positive shout-outs, that would create a more welcoming atmosphere for people in the community to come to the board. I've thought about this question often because there's just a gap there with communication with the community, and I think, wouldn't it be cool to do something like the DA does and have a open, I get this question often, and post it in the newspaper to address a common question from parents or taxpayers or something, where the board quarterly, monthly takes requests, questions from the community and answers that in the local newspaper. community engagement and how do we increase that communication, I also think back to when the meetings were included within the newspaper. We stopped doing that, so we're taking away those common ways of communicating through, and more, probably not even relying on social media as I think about it, because the minutes and agendas aren't posted there either. So you really have to dig on our district website to learn and better understand when the meetings are, what took place, when the meeting minutes are posted several weeks later. So it's hard to be engaged. I think we can do some of the small things better.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Boldig. How can the board be accessible to the community and to specific community groups?
Well, thank you, Peter. I believe that the board is available to the community. Our meetings, we currently hold 2 a month, the committee of the whole and the monthly board meeting. They're open to the public. There is plenty of seating. In my tenure on the board, I've sat in meetings where maybe 3 people have showed up. So, and these meetings are announced, they're published in the paper. As a matter of fact, just the other day, I was looking through the paper, here are the board minutes from last month's meeting. So the information is out there. So I think sometimes it's a matter of people accessing that and getting it through. Can we do maybe a little better job on the information on the website? Sure, that's a possibility, and we can work with the administration to get that handled and make it a little more visible. Our email addresses are easily available. Our phone numbers, as far as I know, are easily available. And I do think that the board members, when they're out in the community, I personally, a lot of people will stop, ask me questions. I will try to be as honest and forthright with them as possible. And if they bring up something, I will make a note of it. And we keep that process moving along, and I think we're going to be keeping everything heading in the right direction.
All right, thank you. And on to Mr. Schultz. How can the board be accessible to the community and by proxy specific community groups?
Well, thank you for that question. When I was on the board 2013 to 2016, we had actual committee meetings, and I was actually the chairman of the committee that was involved in community communication with different groups. And we actually held our meetings out in the elementary schools and different schools. In the city schools, we rotated so that every elementary school had a meeting in rotation at some point in time. Obviously, with the elementary schools closed now, you wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to restore that committee. But I would say to do a little bit more innovative and get people's attention, we could take a committee meeting, restore the committee meeting, and take it to the town halls themselves and have people come where they would be able to voice their opinions and voice their concerns and things like that. I think that the board should be more accessible, not just to the community as well, but specific groups like teachers. You know, right now I think the board, only gets a report from the administrators, but, if we're going to take the concerns of the teachers in the classroom, the board should have a meeting specifically with teachers and let them air things out, and then we can take it to the administrators. Are you addressing these things? What's going on with this type of thing, in the classroom? When I was on the board in 2013 to 16, we rarely heard actual teachers bring their concerns up. I did hear over and over again on at these meetings, I heard people come in and say, we moved here because of these little schools. And if you close these schools, we're going to leave. And from even before I was on the board, Roxanne Borneman, she had a meeting over in Crestwood. I was one of 2 people there. I just went there to listen. The only other person there said, hey, we moved here because of these little elementary schools. Now, how are you going to repair that breach, You have to have people that are going to restore a vision, Is K through 6, a centralized K through 7 elementary school consolidated over here in the field going to be the vision that they want to see? I don't think so. So if we're going to have a vision for a long-range plan, I think we got to take a good look at rebuilding elementary schools and focusing on K through 5 education, because without K through 5 education, there's no reason to have a high school or a middle school. It starts right there, and it's most important right there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Zimmerman, how do you believe the board can be accessible to the community and by proxy, specific community groups?
I think we could create a plan, maybe some different marketing. You know, the school district does send out a lot of information, and it is, you know, directed to, if you have a student here, so maybe sharing more with the community, have people sign up for a newsletter. You can always share more information in the paper. I think rotating monthly meetings to different schools. With technology, I mean, look at us today. This is on YouTube. So we could rotate and have a capacity, and we could go to the elementary schools. I think it'd be great because people could actually see what they look like inside. I know it's been a rough year. My daughter has had some challenges, so I've been in her school, and it's not big enough. It's not great. Our counselor's in a closet. I mean, there's things that people would see and maybe wake up a little bit if they're in the schools. You know, and I mean, you could survey the community, can reach out to teachers. The last month or two, I've called teachers, I've emailed them, I've asked them in person. I've sent a survey to 50 faculty the other day, and 40% of them responded, asking for their input. A lot of times people aren't comfortable, so if we don't ask the community how they want to see the board and know about the board, then we're not going to know either. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mary, how can the board be accessible to the community and by proxy, specific community groups?
Well, I think the board is accessible. One of the things about the pandemic here is we have been doing more broadcasting of board meetings, and I'm surprised how many people tell me that they listen to the board meeting and they come back and ask me about something or comment on something that was discussed during a board meeting. And so I think that's been a positive. People are a lot more comfortable doing Zoom meetings and looking at YouTube videos. But I think we are accessible. I know that I get emails from parents asking me about things, and I answer those. I answer all of them, but really some of those have to be answered by school staff, either a teacher or a administrator. That's really where those questions are addressed to. But they want me to know that they're asking the question. They want me as president to know that. So we're accessible that way. Certainly all the meetings, the newspaper does a great job of writing about what the meetings are going to be, what happened at the meetings. The radio station also does a good job of covering school news. I know that the paper has I think it's a whole page dedicated to school news every week. The district sends out a community newsletter on a regular basis, and each school sends out a newsletter, and I find these really, really helpful as a board member to be able to read the newsletters of the schools. So I think we're accessible. I've heard some good comments here. I like Jill's idea of people could submit questions and we'd answer them in the newspaper. I think that's a great idea. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And lastly, on to Mr. Gagnon. How can the board be accessible to the community and by proxy, specific community groups?
One of the advantages of being the last guy, you get a lot of good ideas from a lot of other people. So I'd just like to echo what Andy and Mike Boldig said. The school board is accessible. We meet twice a month. The agenda is published on the school's website so people can access it. If a specific group has a question, they can get put on for public comment, or they can bring a formal request and we can investigate it. We'll look at it. The newspaper covers school district issues. The radio station covers district issues. I was on the radio this morning. Several of us have been on and will be again. So I feel the board is accessible. People have to go looking for it. The idea of rotating school board meetings to different locations, I think that's an excellent idea. That way everybody can have access to it, to us. Maybe move them to a town hall once in a while, to an elementary school. I know with COVID we've had a lot of issues. Things have been a little disrupted. to say the least. But again, as far as accessibility, if people want to find out what's happening in the district, they can look it up, they can ask any one of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I'll be handing the mic back over to Juliana.
Alrighty, and on to the third question. We will be starting with Ms. Maddock Nelson. What issues do you believe the district needs to address in the academic programs and offerings, and what changes do you recommend?
Issues to address academically, as a parent, would be concerns with Common Core. I've heard and received a lot of feedback regarding dissatisfaction from parents with the Common Core curriculum and standards, specifically with Common Core math. It's miserable and it's brutal. So it creates a barrier and unneeded stress within households where parents struggle to help their children with homework. And then when you look at our student achievement, our achievement scores in math is low. So Common Core has been in place for several years now. I want to say 2011, however, I could be wrong and would need to confirm that. My concern is it's been in place, we've given it a shot, and it doesn't seem to be providing positive results in terms of student achievement. Studies have also shown that same thing, that Common Core math is not showing an achievement in, or increase in student achievement. So that would be a concern that I have, is revisiting our standards and moving away from Common Core.
Perfect, thank you. And on to Mr. Boldig. What issues do you believe our district needs to address within its academic programs and offerings, and what changes do you recommend?
From what I see, the biggest issue is reading. If kids can't read from the beginning, they're not going to be able to get any of the other stuff. So we've placed a much larger increased emphasis on our reading programs and stuff. I believe we're starting to see some gains from those. The Common Core math, I actually participated in a math class a while back here at the high school and sat in with some students. And I can understand some potentially why some people are reluctant to use it, but in the same vein, I don't think it is the bastion of education that everyone is making it out to be. It's different. And I think that in and of itself makes it a little more unpalatable for the general public. Can we improve on it? Yes. Is that something we need to work on? I would agree we probably do, and it's something we can. I think to me, one of the high points of our district academically is right here at the high school with our tech ed programs. We've gotten good student participation in tech ed programs. And those tech ed programs translates back over to what the workforce in our area is looking for. They're looking for good, qualified workers. The kids are coming out of high school with that education so that they can move into those jobs, and it's not necessarily geared so much anymore around being college educated. You can go into the workforce right from high school. I'm an example of that myself. I went right from high school into a job, and I've been there for 47 years. So yeah, it is possible. So that would be the issues I'd look at. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And Mr. Schultz, what issues do you believe our district needs to address within its academic programs and offerings, and what changes do you recommend?
Well, as like I said, I've been out in the community and I ask people questions, they ask me questions, and a lot of times I heard parents, one particular parent said, actually I've had more than one couple parents talk about, why are the kids not required to memorize their math tables? The guy over here on 10th Avenue was asking me that. Employers are talking about, people come out of the high school and they can't, some of them can't read real well, some of them can't make change. I heard a Fleet Farm employee tell me that the guy had to sign his name in order to buy purchase a rifle, and he says, I don't know how to sign my name. He had to mark an X. Another time I heard somebody say that a couple got married and they didn't know how to sign their name on their marriage certificate. Now these are true stories, and I'm not making these things up. So we really have to go back to the K through 5 at beginning level, you will find that parents who are involved with their kids the kids do the best in the school. Now, I understand there's single moms and things like that around here, and they have a hard time and things. And if a good teacher can pick up a student that's struggling, you can find somebody that's in a broken home will do real well too. But predominantly, it's the parents. And so, a reading program should target parents when their kids are 1, 2, 3 years old. Can the district send out books, reading level books to these parents, or can we send memos to them? Get the parents reading to their children. I read to my children when they were real little. They sat there listening. Sometimes they asked me to read the certain books over and over again. They all knew how to read before they got to kindergarten because they heard us. As far as K through 5, I think one thing I'd like to see do this, is if you could find an 80-year-old teacher back when elementary education was really good, like when I went to school 100 years ago, they would write a test for us, and the school board members would take this test to the 5th grade class, and each board member would administer the test to a certain number of kids, and then we would know as a board member just exactly how they did in reading, writing, history, and spelling.
Alrighty, thank you. And moving on to Ms. Zimmerman, what issues do you believe our district needs to address in its academic programs and offerings? And finally, what changes would you recommend?
As I've said before, not all students are learning the same way. I know our school district has worked hard to help the students and kind of meet them where they're at, and then try to build them up. Especially this year, they've really been working extra with students for reading, and it's helping. I feel the same, kind of as Mike said, is if you can't read, you're not going to learn. So looking at what curriculum's working for our district or not working, and looking at other schools, I'd really let the experts do that. I don't think that's me as a school board member wouldn't probably know that one. I've also heard from surveying teachers and heard from parents too that the Common Core math isn't working. And that's look at ways that we can work towards workforce development. I've seen it, I don't know if it was here, but it was not just focusing on a career day, but work. How are we going to teach students to fill out a job application, and what are they going to do when they graduate, and help them have a plan for the future, not put so much pressure on let's go to college, but teach them everything they need, because they might not be learning that. You know, my dad taught me how to hammer nails and do things like that, but kids don't get exposed to that if they're living with different people and so on. So I think helping students, teach them how to live on their own.
Perfect, thank you. And moving on to Mr. Mary, what issues do you believe our district needs to address within its academic programs and offerings, and which changes do you recommend?
I agree with Mr. Schultz there. Reading is probably the most important thing that we need to be teaching kids. And I also agree that if you can have parents who read to their kids when they're small and read a lot, that is going to go a long ways. On the other side of the coin, 54% of the kids in our district are from economically disadvantaged school families, and 70% of kids in the elementary schools are from economically disadvantaged families. And there's been lots of data to show that it's just more work to teach kids from economically disadvantaged schools. The Blue Ribbon Commission, which was a bipartisan commission, one of their recommendations was that schools be funded at 1.2 for each economically disadvantaged child, meaning they would get more money to teach these students. And so, knowing that, we have to take students as they come to us and work on that. And I think one of the things we've been working on here is we're putting more phonics into our reading program. I think we bought a reading program a couple years ago, a former superintendent purchased, and it didn't have a lot of phonics, didn't have any phonics in it. And so this summer, we'll be sending quite a few of our elementary teachers to CISA 9, where they'll get training in the science of reading, which includes a lot of phonics. And the math program, yes, I know a lot of people complain about the math program. I know that our director of instruction is going to start looking into the math program. It's been a step. We had to get reading first. We'll start unpacking math and hopefully come up with new math programs within a year or two.
Alrighty, thank you. And back over to Mr. Gagnon. What issues do you believe our district is facing within our academic programs and offerings, and which changes would you recommend?
Well, getting back, as far as the elementary schools go, I have very little experience. I'm the guidance counselor at All Saints. I've subbed in elementary schools. To find out what needs to be done at the elementary schools, I'll go back to my original comment. Ask the teachers. They're in the classroom every day. They know the kids. They know the curriculum. Ask what they think should be done. That's a valuable resource. At the high school level, I think high school should be a time where every student can explore any avenue of education they want. Tech ed, liberal arts, music, drama, whatever. I think these things all have to be accessible to high school students. Not every student is set out to go to college. I wasn't college material. I got out of high school in 1968. I worked in the printing industry, running a printing press for 20 years before I decided to go to college. The old midlife crisis hit, and I thought I got to do something different. I didn't start teaching until I was in my early 40s. So, does everybody have to go to college? No. I had a plumber come into my house a couple years ago and do some plumbing. He was doing things that I can't do. And I got a couple of college degrees. Who's smarter? Everybody is different, and I think every student should be able to explore everything they can at the high school level. I think tech ed is very important, but I think students need to be able to explore the humanities also. Thank you.
Perfect. And finally, Mr. Bardo, what issues do you believe that our academic programs and offerings are currently facing, and what changes do you recommend?
Thanks, Juliana. When I was a superintendent at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood for 16 years, two of my favorite days were the 100th day of school, because I got to be Zero the hero. And I went in with first graders, second graders, and kindergartners, and we counted by ones to 100, and by twos, and by fives. And then I told them that if they learned math, and if they learned how to read well, they could do anything. My second favorite day of being a superintendent was Dr. Seuss Day, because on that day, elementary teachers invited me in to read Green Eggs and Ham to those students. And yes, I'm a bean counter. I know. You figured out that the budget and the accounting system is what I really know well, because I'm a math guy. But I hate Common Core math. My grandson and I did 2 plus blank equals 5, and the teacher said, show your work. So the second line was 2 plus 3 equals 5, and the third line was box equals 3. And it was wrong, because apparently both he and I didn't know all the steps that needed to take place in Common Core math. What I see that we need to do going forward is change the committee of the whole and go back to committees, where board members can interact with our good teachers, our good administrators, and come up with curricular changes that will be good for this school district. I'll give you an example. All our board members, the current ones and who may be on the board next, have individual skills that need to be implemented in committees. Mary Neufeld, current member of your board, excellent teacher, taught 3 of our children. I would think that she would be a great teacher back to come on as a board member on a curriculum committee and to let us know what was successful in our elementary schools 15, 20 years ago.
All righty, thank you, and now back to Peter.
Thank you. And I'll begin with Mr. Boldig. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
Very difficultly. Very, very simple. It's not an easy task. You look at a school budget, and I believe ours is over $30 million a year. 80% of that goes to paying salaries and benefits for our faculty and staff. So that just leaves us a smaller portion to do everything else. So yes, we as a board look at that, but we rely on our administrative team to work with us to help us make sure that that budget, that the money is going into the right places. It's not there's really no simple answer to it, but we work very hard every year to make sure that that monies go to the right place at the right time to make sure that the kids are getting a quality education.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Schultz. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
Okay, so yes, what is our whole purpose of being a district, a school district, and stuff like this is to provide quality education to our students. And that is exactly why school districts were created, and schools, whether they're K through 5, elementary, K through 6, 7, 8, whatever, middle school, high school. And it is taken from the taxpayers, not just on our property taxes, but it's also taken from state taxes, property taxes, and other means of taxes from the people. So it's there's a lot of taxes that are taken from the people in order to fund these. The major thing is to be involved and understand how the taxes are, how school districts spend their money and what it's spent on, where it goes. If we, let's see. You absolutely have to respond to education. Okay, I'll give you an example. When I was on the board 2013, 2016, we were talking about referendums for building new schools. Some of the people came in and begged us to provide a referendum that would keep the elementary schools open, and even if they had to pay more money. Now, you're gonna, if you balance the need, because between that and going after taxpayers is, are they willing to pay for what you're presenting? We have to have money for teachers, curriculum, and all these other things, but when you talk about facilities and things like that in long-range term, people want to know, are they going to have access? The further out a school is from the people, the harder it is for parents to come in and have access to the kids. We talk about, is it about the kids? It's about the kids, yeah, but if the parents aren't happy with the schools and the amount of money they're paying for these schools, they can move and leave and the kids go with them. So it's very important that we respond to what the people have said and made known in these meetings and in the referendums.
Thank you. And on to Ms. Zimmerman. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
Well, the school district has to live within our means. And if that means people don't want their taxes to go up by $10 to $30 a year, then they need to stop saying that education of our students is important. We all have received a number of money in the last year, and many of us don't need it. Make one simple change and save the extra money. so we can have a better education for our students. Looking at what's most important and putting it back on the administration, and then bringing it, of course, to the board for oversight. But it's just going to limit our students if we don't do something.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Mary. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
I think to start with, the school board only gets so much money. We have a revenue limit, so you can only collect so much money in the combination of state taxes and property taxes. If we were to want more money, we'd have to go to an operational referendum. And I know that that would be very hard for a lot of people, and so we're not inclined to want to go there if we can avoid it. And so we have to look at ways of making the most efficient use of our money. And we do that over time. One of the things we did here is, because we were closed last spring, we had saved some money, and we put that money into the fund balance. I know there has been the comment that we didn't collect state aid because we put it into the fund balance. That's not totally true, because that money will come back out. In a year or two, we may need that money to keep providing a quality education. And when we take that money out of fund balance, it is going to be state aided. So at that time, our taxes will decrease, comparable to what they increased this year. And so I'm one to say, yes, we need to spend money when it has to be spent, but we shouldn't just try and spend money to get rid of it. So I think the other thing we need to do is, I mentioned it before, we need to work with our state legislators to try and get equity in funding. So all school districts in the state get equal funding, and that we don't take state funds and give it to the more wealthy districts and short the poorer districts. Thank you.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Gagnon. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
Being new to the board and being numerically challenged, I know nothing about how schools are funded. Okay, I've had a couple of conversations with our finance guy, and I really don't understand how it works. But I know that school districts all over the state are hurting, and everybody wants a bigger piece of the pie. Well, I think we need a bigger pie, because there just isn't enough to go around. Education is an investment that we cannot afford not to make. How that money comes out, I'll have to do some more research to find out where we get it from. But if we don't make that investment, our students are going to suffer. And you don't see a return on that investment right away. You see a return on that investment in years to come, when our students succeed and get good jobs and pay their share of the taxes. Again, I'm on a pretty steep learning curve when it comes to school funding.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Bardot. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
School boards need to listen to their administrator and the people who work for that superintendent, and be given choices on what they can do to make sure that the budget is a good budget and that it is spent, because I am the person up here who understands school budgets, school finance, because I managed budgets at 2 different schools for 19 years. And a mistake was made last year. And the mistake was adding over $827,000 to our fund balance, which means that was money that was taxed for and not spent. And DPI always looks at what a district spends as to the budget they were allowed. And in our case, they shorted us $702,000 this year, which basically was added to your taxes. Now, Tim Parenti, who is our business manager, who replaced Mary Jo Philbrandt a few years ago, at the Cal meeting 2 weeks ago stated he thinks we're going to be $400,000 to $450,000 unspent this year. Now, I have a solution. It's in our budget. It's on page 24. It's called prior service liability. It's a debt we owe. Going into this school year, we have 4 years left on that liability. We should be able to pay it off this year using that $400,000 plus what was added to the fund balance last year, and we will save over $42,000 in interest. What that will do will mean next school year we will not have to make that liability payment, and we will have $305,000 that we can add to trying to improve our teachers, our students' achievement, and that's what we need to do. And that $305,000 will be there in each budget going forward for the rest of our lives.
Thank you. And finally, with Ms. Maddock-Nilsson, how does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to local taxpayer burden?
We balance that by responding to the why to our taxpayers, which I don't know that we have done very well, and I think we could do that better. So I'm also not a numbers person. I'm very open about that. However, I am a questions person because I think knowledge is power. And so I'm sitting up here today because I'm asking for your vote in the board election, which means I need to have some understanding of budget. So I asked a lot of questions. The simplified 2-minute answer in terms of the fund balance was this. We chose to put $800,000 into the fund balance. The state recognized that and said, you're getting significantly less funding. I recall vividly reading the Antigo Daily Journal article stating that our district was getting $700,000 less than what we anticipated. And I was like, how can that happen in a pandemic? Like, this doesn't make sense. How can the state do this? We're a rural school, we struggle. But I asked a lot of questions and learned that by putting that money there, we just didn't spend it, so the state didn't give it to us following that decision. There were plenty of places to put the money in, and I respect spending money efficiently, and I respect our teachers and what they provide our students out of their own pockets. I mean, ask any teacher the amount of money they spend on our students out of pocket. I feel with $800,000 that our district could have done better with spending. We had remote learners without internet access. We had technology purchases. We had COVID relief. This is separate from that. We could have used that money elsewhere. We're not being transparent about the amount of money we've spent on the Mattoon school sitting unoccupied. That's a significant amount of money. So we have to balance the taxpayer burden, but we have to be transparent about the decisions and the why behind them. And as taxpayers, we also have to feel comfortable asking those tough questions because it's your tax dollars and you deserve to know where they're going.
Thank you all, and I'll be handing you back to Juliana.
Alrighty, and our fifth question is going to start off with Mr. Schultz. Given all of the issues that are arising, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Well, I think what I'd like to see, we have to do some things that are innovative. We have to do some things that are out of the box. You know, we have to get out of this traditional mindset of thinking of what we think is of education. And I think one of the ways to do that was, like I said before, is that the school board should have a test for the fifth graders and see just exactly how well they did, how they respond to different areas and things like that. So the school board members themselves know exactly how the students are achieving. There's another, when I was on the board 2013 to 2016, I did some more research. And there's a European country that is among the top 10 in the world as far as academic performance. And their teachers stay with their children first 5 years of their education. I think that's very, very powerful, you know, and you take that with an option of going to a K through 5 or K through 6 or K through 7 centralized school where the teachers are going to go class to class to class because we think we're going to get the best math teacher, best science teacher, best, you know. I've always asked the question, if a teacher's come, respectfully of teachers, if a teacher's come out of higher education with a teaching degree, why can't every teacher teach 8th grade math proficiently or 6th grade math proficiently? I'm pretty sure I could. I'm pretty sure I'm a good expert at anything 5th grade level, school board member or not, because I've been there and I've raised my own kids. So we have to find ways that are different than what we've been doing and cater more to the children themselves and to the teachers, and find where the teachers that are strong like this, that really want to be teaching, and not just some teachers that are coming here, it's a good job, it pays well, you have benefits, you have retirement, things like that. Find the teachers who really have a passion to teach and give them the opportunity to teach, you know, and give them whatever they need. And I would say even try and let them stay with the class 2-3 years. If that's what works, being in the top 10, what is America now, 30 or 40 ranked in the world?
Alrighty.
We need to do something different. Thank you.
Alrighty, sounds good, thank you. And moving on to Ms. Zimmerman, given all of the issues that arise and are still arising, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Well, I mean, we have to do some strategic planning. I know our district has done some work already, and let the teachers and the educators do the work there. And I think as a board member, we need to be engaged, we need to listen, we need to provide support, and we need to advocate for our school district and focus on the tasks that come to us and leave the education to the people that are trained to do it. And that's all I have.
Perfect. And moving on to Mr. Mary, given all of the issues that arise and are still arising, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
I think we are focused on student achievement and what it takes to have good education. And it's just not, I mentioned the idea of putting more phonics into reading and looking at different math programs. But the other big part of education is culture. And so we need to get a culture in our schools where everybody's working together. And I think in the last 2 to 3 years, we have gone a long ways toward doing that. There was a time before that where things were kind of not so great. I'll admit that. That was a time when I was on the board. But I have visited all of the schools this school year, even though it's a pandemic going on, and I am impressed with the behavior, the improvement in behavior of kids. And I don't know if that's a result of they're just thankful that they get to go to school, or if what we've been working on for several years is having some effect, and kids are learning to respect their teachers. But I think there's just way more respect in our school, and I think that is going to make a difference in school achievement. I also think I see the teachers working together as teams a lot more than they have in the past, and that is really rewarding. I visited the middle school. I was there on a day when the 5th grade team was working together. I went in and met the new 5th grade teacher, and she was so thankful that she gets to work on a team like that and have mentors of teachers who have worked for years and want to see her achieve. And so I think that's all going to help us in student achievement. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And back to Mr. Gagnon. Given all of the issues that arise, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Well, just kind of echo what Andy said. I think that letting a teacher be mentored by experienced teachers is invaluable. If you want to improve student achievement, let teachers teach. When a teacher goes to college to become a teacher, they study their material, their field of study. Elementary ed, in the higher grades, their specialty may be English, language arts, history, tech ed, whatever. They learn their material, but they also learn how the brain develops. They learn a little bit about psychology. They're very well rounded. By the time they've taught for 4, 5, or 6 years, they can read a student, they can look at a classroom and pretty much figure out what will and what won't work. There's been talk about Common Core math. There's been a lot of discussion. It's probably not the best thing, but sometimes you just learn by trial and error. But to improve student achievement, give the teachers a latitude to teach in a manner that's conducive with their personality. You can get 2 different social studies teachers teaching World War II history. They may have different methods, drastically different methods on how to go about it, and each one will be effective in their own manner. So it doesn't matter. The way you teach is determined by your personality and the personality of the class. And giving teachers a latitude to do that will automatically boost student achievement.
Alrighty, thank you. And Mr. Bardo, given all of the issues arise, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Thanks, Juliana. I talked earlier about the 5 ways that boards can be effective, and one that I mentioned was a clear vision. Because with a clear vision and high expectations for quality teaching and learning, we can support, as board members, strong student outcomes. Another one was accountability. Most people think of accountability in a school system or a governmental agency, which a school is, as a pyramid, and it's not. It's a circle. So if we think of our school board at the top, and underneath is the school superintendent, who is accountable to the school board, but the rest of the administration and the principals are accountable to the superintendent. The teachers need to be accountable to the principals, the students to the teachers, parents to the students. And we come full circle because a board member is a representative of the community who elected them. And that gets back to we need to listen to the people who elect us. We need to have open dialogue with our community to get their input into what they want. We need open dialogue with our teachers, our administrators. When I was superintendent at Wittenberg-Burnhamwood, our board agenda had a thing called Concerns from the Floor. Every member of the district had an opportunity to talk to the school board for 5 minutes at each board meeting. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. And back to Ms. Maddock-Nelson. Given all of the issues that arise, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
The board can stay focused on student achievement by identifying a long-term goal, which like Dr. Bardot had just spoken about. So I reviewed the Wisconsin Association of School Boards website and gathered some information about those 5 areas. And similar, I'll just reflect because I think it's very fitting, is the vision is identified as a clear vision and high expectations, establish clear and specific goals to move districts forward. I was very excited to listen to and hear the presentation by Ms. Doms and her school administrative staff, the principals and associate principals, regarding the continuous improvement and what that entails. and I had to watch it a few times to better understand it. But what I see from that, and I may not be correct, but what I interpret that to be would be the objectives to the unknown long-term goal. So what's the long-term goal of our district? So we can be accountable and know if we're meeting those. Or staying focused on student achievement by referring back to what's our long-term goal and what are our objectives to meet those goals. The second thing that comes to mind is reigniting the extracurriculars. So we have 2 students here moderating tonight, and that is 50% of our forensics team. Last year, I'm told, the numbers were much higher. When we have high numbers in extracurriculars, that's naturally going to increase student achievement. We know that by studies for years, we know that. So what can we do to shift some focus on reigniting that motivation, those numbers, get the numbers up in all areas with extracurriculars, from forensics to basketball, and especially with COVID. I think that's another dynamic that we've lost numbers on just by losing motivation throughout the pandemic. So student achievement, I think, also goes hand in hand with extracurriculars.
Perfect, thank you. And finally, Mr. Boldig, given all of the issues that arise, how can the board stay focused on student achievement?
Well, I think we already are, and I would have to agree with the statement Mr. Mary made earlier, because we review the data with administration on a regular basis at the board meetings. And I think our staff and administration are constantly working together to update the staff and train them. We have in the district what they call PLCs, professional learning communities. These are teachers that are going and doing work above and beyond the normal stuff to work together to train themselves. We have sent people out to PLC training. Now those individuals have come back and they are now the trainers. And they're working with their peers to make them better. So we're providing a better education and working on student achievement to make it just that much better. It's a long, slow process. Like the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. Educating a student takes a long time. It's not something that's going to change overnight.
All righty, thank you. And finally, for question 6, I'm going to pass it off to Peter.
Thank you. And we'll be beginning with Ms. Zimmerman. As a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
That's a very tough question. We really have to learn more about where all our money is allotted to. Talk with Tim Prunty and see, and the administration. Yeah, I don't know where I would make a budget cut. Yeah, I mean, I would like to look at expanding our budget and look at ways we can lobby for more funding. Being that I work for the Boys and Girls Club, we have a Wisconsin State Alliance, and I'm on the executive committee for that, and we lobby with the legislature to receive funding. And as Andy kind of said too, maybe there's ways we can do that. So before making a budget cut, I would want to make sure that we're looking at everything possible and seeing if there's other ways we could bring in more revenue so we don't have to cut anything.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Mary. As a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
That is a hard question. You know, having served on the board as long as I have, we have made a lot of cuts. And I can't say that I've enjoyed any of the cuts we've made. I know we saved a lot of money when we consolidated, but did I enjoy consolidating? Did I think that was a great thing? Not necessarily. It would have been nice to keep all the schools open. We've cut teachers. We've rearranged the high school schedule so teachers would be teaching an extra class each day. And And that's good and bad. I think Mr. Gagnon has said, that teachers have lots of students to teach, and maybe if they had 20 less in a day at the high school level, things would go better. So I'm kind of with what Angel said here. I think we need to lobby. We need to look for equity in funding in education in the state. Our state representatives have to decide, do they represent us or do they represent districts, the more well-to-do districts? And the good part is, we have two people running for state superintendent. They both want more equity in education. We have a governor who has proposed a budget that has a lot of things that give more equity in education. It's not about creating more taxes. It's just about how the money gets divided up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And over to Mr. Gagnon. As a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
I don't think there's any place we can cut. Saying is you got to trim the fat. Well, I think we got rid of all the fat. Now we're cutting into the muscle and the bone. Several years ago, the high school went from a 7-period day to an 8-period day to shrink class sizes. So teachers didn't have so many students in each class. Well, as a result, classes were 20% shorter or thereabout. I had one teacher told me he had to cut his curriculum by 20% because he just didn't have the seat time to present to those students. Why can't we have small class sizes and decent class periods where the students can learn, where the teacher can teach them something, give the students time to process it, and ask the teacher for questions? There is nothing left to cut. As I said before, everybody wants a bigger piece of the pie. We simply need a bigger pie. And as school board members and educators, I think it's up to us to tell our legislators that school funding needs to be kicked up a little bit. We don't have any place to cut. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Bardot, as a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
Well, as an administrator and as hopefully a future board member, that's a very difficult thing to do. But it's unfortunately under the current system of budgeting that DPI puts us in under, it's all started by the student count on the third Friday, and we're a declining enrollment district, which means that we're losing kids. And Mr. Prenti, our business manager, has already put out that if everything stays the same, next year's budget will have to be cut by $254,391. Well, I told you how we could save it by $305,000. But here's the next year, $1 million. The next year, $900,000. The next year, $370,000. And the following year, $290,000 less that our budget will be. We are going to have to trust our administrators to tell us as board members where we need to make these cuts. I have already heard at the board meeting that they're going to try to sell you a referendum to make up for these cuts. Now, if the community wants and tells us, yes, it's important for us to increase our taxes to cover these cuts that are coming due to declining enrollment, that will save the cuts. But if they tell us no, the only thing left to do, unfortunately, is to cut staff, which puts people on unemployment, because 80 to 90% of a school budget is personnel. And that's the hard part, cutting jobs. And I hope I don't have to do that.
Thank you. And Ms. Maddock Nelson, as a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
My first thought is I wouldn't look to make budget cuts, and I know what that question is getting at. You know, in the event that you have to make cuts, where do you start? But I think language is important. So if I'm elected to our board, and if cuts are something that is required, I would want to feel very, very confident that the decisions made to cut programs or staff is a well-informed decision because we've explored all options. I like what Ms. Zimmerman shared earlier, explored all additional revenue sources and funding, and there just isn't alternatives. I'm a firm believer in creative problem solving and thinking outside the box. I'm not saying that that's available now. What I am saying is let's make sure that we look at everything possible before making cuts because it's hard. We have staff and admin and students that work so hard, so the thought about having to make cuts is nauseating. But I know that's a reality, so I would just want to feel very okay with where those cuts would come from.
Thank you. And on to Mr. Boldig, as a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
There is no real simple answer to that question. Most of the programs, as Mr. Gagnon related to, there is no fat left. We are down to bone and muscle, and we have been for a long time. But because of the hard work of our business manager and his team, we do have a budget every year, so we're working it through. To the point that Mr. Bardo made, yeah, eventually if your student population drops to the point of where you may have to let staff go, that's not an easy decision for any one of us. Nobody likes to see their friends out of work, and people in this community are our friends, and that's difficult. I think something that also needs to be thought about here too, Ms. Nelson brought up the part about co-curriculars. I think that's something that's important to the district, but a lot of people do not know that most of the co-curriculars, especially from the athletic side, are funded by the booster clubs. It's not money that's coming out of the school budget per se to handle. The booster clubs are funding money. The Gridiron Club, for instance, right now is funding a big project to put new drainage and new turf in at Schofield Stadium so that we have a football team, we'll have a nice place to play football. There's a booster club for baseball, there's a booster club for basketball, there's a booster club for hockey. They fund those programs. So there is no easy way to cut budgets in this area anymore. Is it something that we may have to look at? Yes. But when we get to it, that will be the job of the board at that time to delve into the hard issues and take care of things.
Thank you. And finally, on to Mr. Schultz. As a board member, where would you look to make budget cuts?
Well, I think the number one place we could start with budgeting cutting is stop paying the attorney that's suing the Mattoon School District, trying to keep them from taking over their building and using it as what they would like to do as for their own community. Now, I don't know how much money they spent on attorney fees themselves, but there's no reason to be fighting a school district, an area, a community that pays taxes to this district for that school. They built that school from their own taxpayer, that we should be having an attorney sue them to keep them from taking possession of it. There's other ways, from Scott Walker to Tony Evers almost every year, funding on a per student basis has been increased. So the pie has been getting bigger per student. And if you want to, there's different ways that you can use money to cut money. For instance, I don't know how many lights are in this building right now, how many of them are LED lights. I mean, you can cut a lot of electrical costs by going to LED lights throughout the whole district. Business on the corner of, across from Kerber Rose, I can't remember, Sweeney I think it is, They spend $300,000 in replacing their fluorescent lights to go to LED lights, and they said their payback was 18 months on their electric bill for that. So there's things like that we can do in the building and grounds in that way. Another way, as far as, are we looking at ways to cut money because we think the enrollment's going to keep going down? What happens if we cause our enrollment to go back up? Reading from the Antigo Daily Journal here, quoting Mr. Prunty, says the drop in numbers is due to several factors, including the open enrollment law, virtual schools, and school choice laws. Prunty said with the closure of the Mattoon School and other rural schools in the district, dozens of students have fled the Antigo district for other options. How about we open up the Mattoon School, and I guarantee you within a year we'd have another 100, 150 people coming back in. Or if we abandon the K through 7 centralization consolidation school and build elementary schools back in the rural, we'd have a destination district and we'd be bringing maybe 200, 300 people back in the district, and all that money would fix our budget crisis right now. Just change our vision and our long-term goals and our partnership with the community, and actually a partnership with them instead of being opposing what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll be handing the microphone back off to Juliana.
Alrighty, and for our 7th question, we are starting over with Mr. Mary. In your opinion, what is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
Well, I think differences of opinion, it's really about communication and understanding each other. And so if the board forms factions and doesn't want to talk to each other, that's a real detriment to the board. And it's also goes over to administration. And I know whenever a board member questions me about something, if I can't give them that answer, I tell them, talk to our administrator, to a principal. So we really need to have good communication. We need to have respect for each other. And I think the board has been very good respect-wise. And the other thing you need to understand is that when the board votes on some particular issue and it's a split vote, if you're on the losing side, you have to accept that that's the way the board voted, and you have to support what the decision was. If you go around complaining that the board voted the wrong way, that is really decisive to the board. And so it really comes down to communication, discussing issues. You really have to get an issue discussed before we vote on it, and then I think it takes care of itself. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Back over to Mr. Gagnon. What is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
Well, to get back to kind of what Andy said, we have to communicate, and half of communicating is listening. We have to listen to each other, find out why somebody feels the way they do, find out what they think and why they feel that way. There has to be logic. People have to look at things logically. And you may have a different point of view than I do, and if I see where you're correct, if your way of thinking is a little clearer than mine, fine, I'll listen to you. Not everybody is going to get what you want all the time. It's a give and take. There has to be room for compromise, and the compromise has to be half and half, where you do the best make the decision that's best for the community and the school. It might not be exactly what you want, but the bottom line is our kids need a quality education, and it's up to us to find the best way to do that. And the more different ideas you have, the better decision you can make, and you'll reach those decisions by listening to each other.
Alrighty, thank you. And Dr. Bardo, what is the best way to address differences of opinion between the board or between the board and the administration?
Every board I've ever been on has people lining up on different sides of an issue. Everybody smiles when it's 9-0, but there are always differences of opinion. And Mr. Mary was actually correct in stating that when a board decision is made, if it's 5-4, the four immediately have to support the decision. And that he is correct in that that helps the board become a better board when they follow the rules. When it comes with administration, the big thing that the board needs is honesty. They need the administration to give them an honest answer, to give them possibilities that they can choose from that will work to fit with a budget, for example. But the big thing is to have respect for your other board members and respect for the administration, the teachers, and the parents. And Mr. Gagnon said about listening, you always treat the people in the community with dignity, and you listen to their requests. You may not be able to always tell them a yes answer, but you always listen and treat them with dignity.
Lovely, thank you. And Ms. Maddock-Nelson, what is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
Differences of opinion, I mean, when I think about that, my first thought doesn't go to necessarily like differences of opinion within conflict or disagreements, but necessarily just differences in opinions based on which avenue to take. So I don't always see that necessarily as a negative connotation or a negative situation to address. So I would say what I focus on is what's been said is respect for one another, active listening, ensuring that both feel their voices are heard. That goes a long way. I mean, if you don't feel like you're being respected, or it's somebody's cutting you off, or you can't finish your sentence, things like that, nobody feels heard or respected. I don't foresee that happening or being a current issue, but those are just kind of things that come to mind to answer your question. So working through the problem, addressing it head on with respect, and always going back to the mission statement and student achievement, because we can agree to disagree, but we can also, if we can't agree to disagree and move on, then ultimately we're simply just spending more time on the things that aren't going to help student achievement and the culture within our community and our schools.
Perfect. And Mr. Boldig, what is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
Well, I think you have to understand that it's okay to not agree on everything. We've gotten, unfortunately, in society these days, and just the general outlook on things, you're either on one side of an issue or another. There is no middle ground anymore. And I think that's where everything is not black and white. There is some gray someplace, like right here. But nonetheless, there has to be a mutual respect between the parties that are having the discussion. There also has to be some give and take and listening, and neither side needs to understand that they're not always going to get their way. So respecting another person's decision is understandable. You may not agree with it, but once again, as was mentioned earlier, if the board were to take a vote and it was 5-4, 6-3, or whatever, if that passes, you support the decision of the board, even though you may not agree with it totally, but you support it. And that will go a long ways with being able to respect each other's decisions.
Alrighty, thank you. And Mr. Schultz, what is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
I believe the best way to address differences of opinion between board members is to, you got to talk them out. If you come up to an obstacle or a wall where you can't agree on something, then you got to go back to the mission statement of the school district, and that is in partnership with the community. And which side or which opinion is falling as close or in line with the community's wishes, what the community has made known that their wishes are. And that's with whether it's the board members or administrators, but also with board and administrators in internal differences and things like that, then we have to have communication between the administrators, maybe more communication with teachers, and find out exactly what is the problem. Is it curriculum? Is it Is it scheduling? Is it different things like that? But when it's out in the community and long-range goals and making things accessible to parents, making things more going out, it's got to fall in partnership with the community and what is the express, made, known desires of the community and fall on that side. Thank you.
Of course. And then wrapping up, Ms. Zimmerman, what is the best way to address differences of opinion on the board or between the board and the administration?
I think on both sides, mutual respect. I think it's good to have good discussion and see other people's viewpoints. I mean, I don't think you want to be on a board that everybody votes yes to everything or no to everything. I think it's good to see all sides considered. And we need to make sure that we're also always basing those decisions on what's best for the district and what's best for our students. Because I believe that's the main reason we're all up here today, is to help and to keep that in mind. So just being open and honest and letting things go and talk things out.
Perfect. Thank you.
That wraps up our questions from our students tonight. And as much as I know you guys would like to stick around until midnight answering a few more, we are going to wrap up with concluding comments. So everyone gets 2 minutes, and we're going to do this a little bit backwards to make sure we're all awake here. We're going to start with Mr. Mary on the end and work our way all the way back to Mr. Gagnon to wrap up tonight. So 2 minutes concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to you, Kevin, for being the master of ceremonies here, and to Julie Ann and Peter for moderating. You're doing an excellent job. And to Noel for keeping time and keeping us all on track. I would also like to say thank you to all the fellow candidates. I think it's great that people are concerned and want to get involved in our school district, and this is good. You know, for a couple years here, we haven't had uncontested contests, and I think it's good to have more people running. I just want to cover a few things in my closing comments. I'm going to go back to the money that went into fund balance. I just want people to understand that when we decided to put that money into fund balance, there was no stimulus money. At that time, there was talk of a budget that the state might redo their budget and reduce our monies right then. We were receiving information from state lobbyists that were saying, you know, you should put some money away if you can, because we don't know what the future is going to bring. You know, the stock market had crashed. There were millions of people home from work. And so we did what we thought was best at that time. Now, what Mr. Bardo proposes, it's not a bad idea. If we have money available to do that, it's a good idea at this time. But at that time, it didn't seem like a good idea. And I'll go on to committees. I know that there's been mention of having more committees, and I guess I can take credit for reducing the number of committees, because when we had multiple committees, I was one of the people who liked to have as much information as I can. And so I would go to all the committee meetings. And I think other board members felt, wait, if he's going to all the committee meetings, I got to go to all the committee meetings. And pretty soon, everybody's going to all the meetings. And so now we have a cow meeting where everybody is at the committee meeting. And I think it's really good because everybody gets all the information. We discuss things at the cow meeting, and then 2 weeks go by and we vote on those things at the regular board meeting. And during those 2 weeks, you know, you think things over about what you heard, what was presented. You can go back and ask whoever was making a presentation on something, what exactly did you mean by that? Isn't there another way to look at that? And then we can rediscuss it at the regular meeting if we want to. The other thing that I just will reiterate is that I think the board, our board, really needs to get more involved in working with our state legislatures and getting more equity in finance at the state level. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Angel, you're next.
Thank you all for coming, tuning in, listening, and everybody that's up here. If you vote for me, I'll continue to lead with integrity. Integrity is very important to me in my daily life, in my professional life. I would love to work restoring our public trust, finding ways to get our community to work together. We keep talking about decline in enrollment, but this isn't just a school issue. It's our community, and how can we bring businesses here, and how can our community work together and share how great it is to live here, and how can we keep those teachers here that are great and maybe fresh out of college, and have them be teachers that can be here for 30 years. I will listen to anybody. I have experience working on boards, with boards, and I will be the best board member that I can be. I'll listen, I'll advocate, I'll do my research, I'll show up to meetings and ask questions, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to know more and learn more about school board and our school district in a whole, and making Antigo a great place for our students and our community members as well. Again, I think we should research other resources for revenue. I write lots of grants. I'm not sure, I haven't researched what we do in the school district, but there's a lot of things out there, different things we can all look at together, and really just happy to help and do all that I can to make our school district great. So, thank you.
Well, I want to echo Andy Mary's comments too about thank you very much for having us here, and thank you very much for all the answers and the input that was done by the members up here on the table. And I think they were very thoughtful, well thought out, and very good questions that you asked of us. I appreciate that. Thank you for the timekeeper and keeping us on track and distracting us at the last moment to lose our train of thought. My last comments on this and closing comments is, what do we have as a vision, as a long-range term, long-range goals? We don't have the same concept and as Europe does. Europe has been there for thousands of years. Their buildings have been there thousands of years, and things like that. Our buildings here, have only the last 150, 160 years. And so, but we got a plan, like we're gonna be here, I think, another 100, 200, 300, 400 years, unless there's some kind of catastrophic event that happens and wipes us out. But we got a plan that we're gonna be here a long time. So, who has the vision, who has the insight to look forward and give us something innovative, something revolutionary, something that would make this district a destination district, instead of just another carbon copy of another school district where they're consolidating, they're moving everybody into a bigger building, more centrally located. If the business administrator wants to keep pushing that like he has in the past, that's better served in Minneapolis or Chicago or Milwaukee. So, when I was on the board, ICE was looking for a new way something different to do with the middle school. And I had to propose that we market it out to a private college. And in the event of that never happened, but in the course of that, I came in contact with somebody that referred me to a guy who sets up 3D printers. And that's actually how we got our 3D printer into the school at that time, through that avenue. So we have to look in the future. We have to look at what we're dealing with right now today. 2015 letter to the Antigo Daily Journal, I mentioned that there were Ebola and other infectious diseases, and that we'd have to look out that K-7 consolidation school would be the worst thing we could possibly do. Now, this 6 years later, look what we just went through this last year. It's changed our entire country, our entire economy. We cannot, it will never go to a K-7 school because of what we just did. So I'm looking for your vote to help me bring vision, innovation, and a revolutionary way to look at our school district to make it a destination district with distinction. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Well, I think first off, I want to thank Mr. Rogers and the staff here at the school for putting this on, and Ms. Hine for producing a couple of wonderful young people here for asking us some good questions. I think everybody up here tonight has had some good ideas. And as I started out my opening remarks, I've been on the board for 12 years. I would like to continue that work. I think it's meaningful. I think the board has developed a wonderful relationship with our faculty and staff, and they're moving this district forward. And I'd like to be part of that movement to keep it headed in the right direction. So I thank you all for attending here tonight, and for those of you who are watching and listening at home. And please go out and vote on April the 6th, and I hope I'm one of the people you vote for. Thank you.
I would like to start by also recognizing the 3 students in front here. And honestly, I believe that we should give you a round of applause. So I would like to congratulate you guys for all of your work today. You guys started your morning on the morning show, The Breakfast Club. Noelle, you were diligent. That takes a lot of focus, and we appreciate the timer reminders. You guys, truly thank you. We appreciate this opportunity, and you guys made it happen. The time you took in the questions and start to finish today, so thank you. In closing, I shared I'm not a numbers person, I'm a questions person. So I'm running for the board because I'm willing to learn and ask questions and better understand what the board can do to improve student achievements and outcomes, and I think we can do that. I think we focus on our strengths and the strengths within our community. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for investing your time tonight and listening, and those watching as well.
I am a numbers guy. My wife was talking to my mother out in Pennsylvania this past week, and my mother said, well, he's been adding since he was 2. I don't remember that, by the way, but I am a numbers guy. And I think I have value in trying to come up with answers that will be positive for our administration, our teachers, and especially our students, because we are going to be facing a financial crisis. When I said 2 years out, our budget's going down $1 million and the next year is $900,000. We have to come up with innovative ideas on how we're going to solve those problems and do what's best for our students. So I'm asking for your vote. I believe that with my background as a superintendent and my understanding of the school district's budget, that I can be an asset. And again, thank you for being here, and I ask for your vote on April 6th.
Well, I'd also like to thank the crew from the high school, everybody that was involved in putting this on. I think you guys did a remarkable job. My closing statement, back when I grew up, way back in the 60s, there was an old saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Well, I want to be part of the solution. I'm willing to listen, to hear all sides of an issue, and I'll form an opinion based on that. As I said earlier, I can offer a teacher's perspective because I'm doing it, and I think that's important. We have all kinds of people on the board, and I think we all have something to offer. And whether I get elected or not, I'll do the best I can with what I have to work with, like we all do. But I'd like to continue to be part of the solution. So thank you.
All right. On behalf of the audience here and on behalf of the audience at home and on behalf of our students, I want to thank all of the candidates here for coming and sharing their opinion and getting involved in education. We really appreciate it, so let's give them a round of applause. And then one more round of applause for Kevin as our moderator, Peter and Juliana and Noelle for helping us out tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have an awesome evening and get out April 6th and vote.